Just because this chapter feels uncertain doesn't mean the story is over. Keep faith open, because what's coming next is written with purpose. Absolutely. Here's a powerful hook line that captures the heart of your entire speech in one compelling sentence. Just because this chapter feels uncertain doesn't mean the story is over. Keep faith open, because what's coming next is written with purpose. Would you like a shorter version for a video title or thumbnail too? There are moments in life when everything familiar begins to shift, when routines no longer feel stable, relationships begin to change, or plans we once trusted unravel before our eyes. These transitions can be uncomfortable, even painful. We often experience them as loss or failure, as if something is being taken away from us. But what we often forget in those moments is this: transition isn't the end of the story, it's simply the turning of a page. We live in a world that teaches us to fear change, to cling to what we know, to fight for comfort, even when that comfort no longer brings us life. But faith invites us into something deeper. It calls us to trust when the ground is shifting, to believe that endings are often disguised beginnings, and that what looks like closure is often divine preparation. A closed door doesn't mean abandonment. A slow season doesn't mean rejection. Sometimes it's just a sacred pause before a new beginning. There's something powerful about embracing transition, not as a failure, but as a necessary step into what's next. The pages of a story don't compete with one another, they build upon each other. Every chapter has a role. Some are filled with joy, others with challenge, but all are necessary to get to the full picture. When a chapter comes to a close, it doesn't mean we've lost direction. It means we're being moved forward, not pushed away, but drawn deeper. Faith doesn't promise that we'll always understand the timing or the path. It doesn't guarantee that change will come wrapped in comfort or clarity. But it assures us that we're not wandering aimlessly. Faith believes that the author of the story knows what he's doing, even when we don't see the full plot. And that assurance is what gives us the strength to turn the page when everything in us wants to stay in the familiar. We weren't created to stay stuck. We were created to grow. So often, we romanticize past seasons and fear future ones. We assume that the best has already happened. But what if the next chapter is the one where the promise unfolds? What if the pain of now is preparing the ground for a harvest we can't yet imagine? That's why it's so important not to interpret silence as absence, or change as punishment. Transition seasons are not dead ends. They're bridges, and what looks like the wilderness might just be the path to breakthrough. Even in Scripture, we see story after story where what seemed like an ending was really just the setup for something greater. A pit led to a palace, a wilderness led to a promise, a cross led to resurrection. The pattern hasn't changed. What feels like a shutdown might actually be the beginning of your next assignment, the doorway into deeper faith, richer wisdom, and greater purpose. But you won't experience that new chapter if you close the book too soon. Holding on to faith in a season of transition doesn't mean you deny your feelings. It means you acknowledge them, but choose to trust beyond them. It means understanding that discomfort isn't a sign of defeat. It's often the very evidence that something is shifting for the better. It means believing, even when you don't feel it, that the story is still being written, and that the one writing it has already seen the final chapter. Faith isn't made for the moments when everything is clear. It isn't built in the light, it's built in the dark. True faith lives where certainty ends, when you can see every answer, when every prayer is met instantly, when every step is obvious. You don't need faith. You're just following a plan. But when you're standing in a moment where nothing makes sense, when you don't know what tomorrow holds, when the map is blank and the silence is deafening, that's when real faith begins to speak. Faith is not a feeling, it's a decision. It's the decision to believe when your eyes can't see, to trust when your heart is tired, and to keep walking when the path seems invisible. The unknown can feel like a storm, like a constant wrestling with why and when and how. But that's the soil where faith grows deepest. It doesn't bloom in comfort, it blooms in surrender. People of faith throughout history weren't marked by easy lives. They were marked by their willingness to trust in what they couldn't see. They walked when there was no road. They believed in promises that hadn't yet come to pass. They followed a voice, not a map. And they endured silence, not because they were certain, but because they were grounded in something deeper than circumstances. The unknown is not your enemy, it's your invitation. It's the sacred space where you release control, where you learn to rely not on what you feel, but on what you know in your spirit to be true. The unknown is where faith becomes real, where it moves from words to reality. It's easy to speak of belief when everything is falling into place. It's another thing entirely to believe when everything is falling apart. So often we're tempted to let fear fill in the blanks. We ask questions, and when we don't get immediate answers, we assume we've been forgotten. But faith doesn't require instant explanation. It holds steady even when silence stretches long. Faith says, even if I don't know where I'm going, I'm still being led. It says, even when I don't hear anything, I'm not alone. That kind of faith is not fragile, it's fierce. It's not passive, it's powerful. The unknown stretches us, but it also shapes us. It teaches us to listen differently, to pray more honestly, to live with open hands. The unknown breaks pride, crushes self-reliance, and brings us back to the place where dependence becomes holy. It teaches us that we are not the center of the story. We are part of a bigger picture, and faith is our anchor in that unfolding. Sometimes the delay in answers is not denial but preparation. Sometimes the space between what we prayed and what we see is sacred ground, a place where trust is forged. And in that place, even if nothing changes on the outside, everything changes on the inside. Faith is strengthened, vision is purified, peace is discovered, not because of what we know, but because of who we trust in the unknown. There is something profound about walking through mystery with your hands still lifted, your heart still open, your hope still alive. That's the kind of faith that moves mountains, not because it has all the answers, but because it refuses to stop believing, even in the absence of them. The unknown is not a void to fear. It is the very ground where miracles begin. There are times in life when holding on feels like the only way to stay in control. We cling to plans, people, positions, and ideas, not because they still serve us, but because they once made us feel secure. But faith calls us into something higher. It whispers that release is not a sign of weakness, but of trust. Letting go does not mean giving up. It means making room for what's next. In every believer's journey, there comes a moment when the old way of doing things no longer works. The familiar becomes uncomfortable and the known becomes a cage. That tension isn't random, it's purposeful. It's a signal that it's time to release what we're holding too tightly. When we let go, we aren't losing control. We're giving space for divine direction to take over. Our grip may feel strong, but it can never guide us as perfectly as unseen hands can. Sometimes, what we refuse to release becomes the very thing blocking what we've been praying for. We can't step into the new while dragging the old with us. Letting go is a posture of surrender, not defeat. It's an act of obedience, a declaration that we trust the one who sees the full picture, even when we don't. There's peace that only comes after we let go. When we stop striving, stop manipulating outcomes, stop forcing what no longer fits, we find clarity. We discover that release often brings restoration. It creates alignment between our hearts and the divine plan. We find ourselves lighter, freer, and more available to move forward with purpose. Letting go doesn't mean we stop caring. It means we stop controlling. We place what we cannot change into the hands of the one who never fails. And in doing so, we unlock the next chapter of our story. One written not in our strength, but in divine wisdom and timing. Delay is one of the hardest things to accept in the life of faith. When we pray, we often expect immediate answers. When we step out in obedience, we want instant results. But the reality is, delay is a common part of the spiritual journey. It's in the waiting that faith is truly tested and matured. Delay challenges our trust, stretches our patience, and exposes whether we believe in promises only when they're fulfilled, or even when they're still unseen. There's something deeply refining about seasons of waiting. It's in those spaces where nothing seems to be moving that the roots of our faith are pushed deeper. The surface may appear still, even barren, but under that stillness, transformation is taking place. Delay does not mean abandonment. It does not mean rejection. It does not mean the promise has expired. It simply means that the timing of fulfillment is being aligned with a greater purpose than we can currently understand. In the natural, we understand the concept of seasons. A farmer never expects to harvest the same day he plants. There's a waiting period, a time of watering, a time of nurturing. If that principle is true for the physical world, how much more for the spiritual? There are promises we've received, dreams that have been placed in our hearts, visions for our lives that seem to be on pause. But what looks like a pause may actually be preparation. What feels like a delay may be divine timing at work, putting everything into place for the promise to arrive at the perfect moment. Faith is not proved when everything goes according to plan. Faith is proved when the plan is delayed, but we continue to trust anyway. It's easy to believe when the doors open on cue and the answers come quickly. But when days turn into months, and months turn into years, that's when our faith begins to speak loudly. That's when heaven leans in and watches whether we will hold on, even when we don't understand. Sometimes we misinterpret delay as a no, when in fact it's simply a not yet. The danger in delay is that it tempts us to settle for less. It whispers that maybe we misunderstood the promise. Maybe we were wrong to believe. Maybe we should stop waiting and move on. But faith says the opposite. Faith says if the promise came from above, then the timing is not up to me. My responsibility is not to force it, but to trust for it. Delay can also be a safeguard. There are times when we are asking for things we are not yet ready to carry. If what we're asking for arrived too soon, it could crush us instead of bless us. So delay is sometimes an act of mercy, a way of protecting us from what we're not yet prepared to hold. It's not punishment, it's love in disguise. It's not the denial of a promise, it's the forming of the person who will carry it. In the end, delay doesn't stop the plan, it shapes the person. The promise still stands, the vision still lives. What's needed is not more proof, but more perseverance. We wait not in despair, but in expectation. We don't sit idle. We pray, we grow, we worship, we remain faithful. Because we know that delay is never wasted time. It's training ground for destiny, preparation for fulfillment, and the place where faith becomes unshakable. There's something sacred about the quiet seasons, the ones where the noise fades, the pace slows, and the spotlight disappears. These are the moments that often go unnoticed by others but are deeply significant in the life of faith. It's in these silent, hidden places that growth begins to take root. While the world celebrates what is seen, heaven treasures what is formed in secret. The silent seasons are not wasted seasons. They are foundational ones. In these times, it may feel like everything is still. Prayers feel unanswered, doors remain closed, and progress seems invisible. But just because something isn't seen doesn't mean it isn't happening. The most important parts of a tree are not its branches or leaves, but its roots. And roots grow in the dark. In the same way, the silent seasons of life are where our spiritual roots grow deeper. They teach us dependence, humility, endurance, and trust that isn't based on signs, but on conviction. These seasons strip away distractions. They remove the applause, the affirmation, the reliance on activity, and draw us back to the basics: intimacy, stillness, and faith without performance. They are uncomfortable because we are trained to associate movement with meaning. Yet, in these moments of stillness, the Spirit is shaping us from the inside out. Character is refined. Identity is solidified. Intimacy is deepened. The silent seasons reveal what we believe when no one is watching and nothing seems to be changing. There is often more transformation in the quiet than in the breakthrough. The mountaintop moments are powerful, but they are sustained by what was built in the valley. It's in the stillness that we learn to recognize the gentle whisper, to follow without needing constant confirmation, to obey without needing immediate reward. Faith that endures is not built in the spotlight. It is forged in the silence. So when everything slows down, when the noise quiets and the spotlight fades, don't mistake it for absence. Don't assume you've been forgotten. These seasons are not punishment, but preparation. You are being grounded, strengthened, and made ready, not for what's easy, but for what lasts. In the silent seasons, heaven is working deeply, faithfully, and patiently within you. What is grown in the quiet will bear fruit in its time. Faith is not just a feeling. It is an anchor that keeps us grounded when everything around us feels uncertain. When life is unpredictable, when plans fall apart, when we don't have the answers, faith reminds us that the story is still being written. We may not know the details of the next chapter, but we trust the one who does. Holding on to faith in the midst of uncertainty means keeping the pen in the right hands. It means we don't take matters into our own hands out of fear or impatience. We resist the urge to rewrite what we don't understand, and instead believe that there is a divine plan unfolding, even if we cannot yet see it. It can be tempting to take control when nothing seems to be happening. We look at our situations and feel the need to act, to fix, to force. But faith teaches us a different way. It teaches us to pause, to listen, to wait with expectation rather than anxiety. The moments when we're most tempted to take over are often the moments when we need to surrender the most. Letting faith hold the pen means trusting that there is a greater wisdom at work, a purpose behind the process, and a promise that has not been forgotten. Many times we find ourselves questioning the timing of our lives. We wonder why certain doors remain closed, why certain prayers remain unanswered, or why progress seems delayed. In those moments, it's easy to believe that nothing is happening. But what we often don't see is that things are being aligned behind the scenes. What seems like a delay is actually divine orchestration. Faith allows us to rest in that truth. Even when our emotions tell us otherwise, it allows us to move forward with confidence, not because we know what's next, but because we know who is leading us. Keeping the pen in the right hands also means resisting the pressure to compare our story with someone else's. Each journey is unique. Each chapter is written with intentionality. What someone else is experiencing may look like progress, but it may not be meant for us in this season. Faith teaches us to stay focused, to stay planted, and to believe that our own story is unfolding exactly as it should. When we try to copy someone else's path, we risk missing the beauty of our own. Even in the silence, the author is still writing. Even in the confusion, the plan is still in motion. The most powerful stories are often the ones that include valleys, detours, and unexpected turns. But those moments do not disqualify the promise. They develop the character needed to carry it. Faith doesn't just carry us to the mountaintop. It keeps us grounded in the valley. It holds us steady when our emotions waver, when doubts whisper, and when fear tries to take over. Faith in the hands of the right author is not blind. It is bold. It chooses to believe that no detail is wasted, no delay is meaningless, and no chapter is written without purpose. The challenge is not in believing that a new chapter will come. It's in not grabbing the pen when the current chapter feels too hard. But every page has its place. Every paragraph matters. And when we trust the one writing the story, we find peace, even before the next chapter begins. So as we reflect on this journey of faith, through the transitions, the waiting, the letting go, the silence, and the unknown, we are reminded that the story is far from over. What looks like an ending may be the beginning of something greater. The quiet seasons are growing something deep within us. The delays are not denials but divine alignments. And above all, faith is what carries us forward when we can't yet see what's next. This is not the time to close faith. This is the moment to keep it wide open. Because the next chapter isn't just coming, it's already being written. Not by chance, not by fear, but by the hands of purpose and promise. So don't lose heart, don't stop believing, and don't put down your hope. The author is still writing, and the best is still ahead. Thank you for allowing me to speak into your hearts today. May your faith remain strong, your spirit stay expectant, and your eyes stay lifted, because the next chapter is coming, and it's worth the wait. Stay encouraged, stay anchored, and stay faithful. God bless you.